Hey there, everybody. Welcome to TLD Cast today. I'm excited to be here. I'm Toddi, and you guys probably all know me from over the years. I've been part of this group, and occasionally I jump in and I do some awesome interviews. I'm actually really excited today. I have to tell you, in this whole era of waking up every day and feeling like every day is Groundhog Day, I was so looking forward to this because, yay, it's Tuesday. I get to do something really fun, and I get to interview Holly Owens. So I want you guys to meet Holly. Holly is she's just an amazing resource for you guys. So definitely be mindful of the fact that we have the question, the tab down there. So if you have questions, that's the best place to put them. You can vote them up, which is really great. Be sure and talk to each other. You know, if you have a question in the chat, I'll try to monitor that and then bring that to Holly's attention. So that's kind of how this works. And I know there's a few people in here who may not have been in here before, so I'm just kind of explain the platform and about Holly as well. So I was thinking we've got some really busy people, but I think that she's one of the most busy people I have probably seen in this industry. Funny story is that I came to know about Holly through another connection of mine, which is Christine Belzy. And Christine and I chat once in a while, and she's like, "Oh, you should definitely talk to Holly." So that's kind of how this all dovetailed. But I'm just excited. So you are the Assistant Director of Instructional Design with Online Education at Touro College and University System. So Touro has a number of different piece parts, right? Because there's Nevada, there's New York, I think.
Yes.
Okay. I know. Yeah, I mean, I've encountered
New York, Nevada, California. Yeah, it's a lot of different institutions.
Okay. So do you do instructional? Are you the Director of Instructional Design for Online Education of just all of the branches, or just one segment, or how does that work?
We work with all of them, but some of the institutions have their own dedicated instructional designers. So there's some oversight there, but we work with everybody across the system.
Okay. All right. So, and you've taught before, right?
Yes, I have. I'm teaching right now, actually, and I've taught K through 12, and I teach adjunct with Touro.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you are a busy person, and you're getting your doctorate as well. My mind is going,
That's
okay,
correct.
where does this woman sleep? In education administration and leadership. Cool. And then I know you also do some mentoring too. So thank you for doing that, because we have a lot of great new people in this field. And, if you have the time and space to mentor, that's awesome. But I'll let you take it away and just tell us your background story. I will tell everybody really quickly that I've got just by accident, I have tree people working outside of my window today. They have this robotic tree arm that's cutting trees, and that wasn't planned. So I may go on mute and just let Holly tell us everything she knows, and be sure and ask lots of questions. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I thank Christina for connecting me with you, and it's just wonderful. And, a little bit about my background. I started out as a K-12 educator in the high school, and I taught government. And the first day I walked into the school, the principal's like, "You are going to be the tech person." So I was like, okay. So I got a set of clickers and a smart board in my room, and then I fell in love with technology from there. And that grew and grew, and then I went to higher ed. And I was an instructional technologist, and that was a natural transition for me from instructional technology to instructional design. I'm originally from Maryland, and I moved to New York about 3 years ago. I live on Long Island. And I got this role as the instructional designer with Touro College, the School of Health Sciences. And then the VP of Online Education asked me, she was creating a new role as the Assistant Director of Instructional Design. She's like, "Do you want to try this?" And I said, "Absolutely, I want to try this." And then I've been in that role for about a year now. So it's been more squiggly than I'm saying, but it's been a great experience just reaching out and speaking with other educators and designers about what they're currently experiencing with the things that are happening in COVID. My goal is always, as an instructional designer, is to make people feel comfortable with the technology and using the different pedagogical or technical tools, But in the end, it's really about our students. It's about the end user and their experiences with the platforms that we're using, the technologies that we're using. We don't want them to feel, especially now, isolated or like they can't reach somebody for help. So we really want to be there for them, our students and our faculty, and supporting them, throughout this difficult time.
Right. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we came on, and my daughter is the biggest critic of online education at the university level, in a good and a bad way. She'll tell you when something's great and when it's not. So yeah, they're paying attention.
Yeah, they definitely are. And I think faculty, they have their own ideas about what they want to do. The instructional designer's role is to guide them, as they're facilitators in the classroom, we're facilitators and guiding them and presenting these learning journeys for students. And I think that faculty at times they resist it because it's something new. When we start to work with them, the faculty really, they buy in and they're ready to go. They're like, oh, this is wonderful. If something works once, which we always cross our fingers happens, then they're like, oh, this is wonderful experience. I got really great feedback. So the faculty start to try different things. They become more confident. And we all know that confidence makes us want to think outside the box a little bit. So that's, in working with the faculty to create those dynamic learning experiences for our students.
So pre-COVID, what percentage of the university's courses were online?
So pre-COVID, we had roughly about around 200 courses online. And since we're a system, that's a really low percentage as far as Touro is concerned. Most of our online programs are housed in our Graduate School of Education. And they have several online programs. So it was a really low percentage. Now it's everyone. It's 100%. Oh
my God. That's
so it went
from
like 1% to 100. Yeah, that's definitely a huge shift for the faculty and for the students in terms of trying to manage, not only dealing with the external things that are happening in our society and our world, but also trying to still become, be educated and earn their degrees. And I think one of the things that happened when COVID hit is that we all transitioned online and we're like, we're going to do this the best way. It's going to be awesome. And what people found is, they started to discover that there's a lot more to it than just simply uploading documents online or doing a synchronous session with your students. It takes a lot more time and a lot more patience to learn the technologies and what works best for you and your classes and your students. Right. As you know, your audience is always different. The students, the learning styles, their personalities change semester to semester. Like one semester I'll have a very involved group of students, and the other times I'll have, a lot of introverts. And when we're doing Zoom calls, it's hard to get them to chat with me. So I think the expectation was set really high. And when that expectation wasn't met, then everybody's like, well, online education is not the solution. It's terrible. But you can't expect something that's on such a grand scale and to do something with 3 months. It's not possible. We take years to develop programs. If we're developing a new online program, we start out 2 years thinking about that. And 3 months compared to 2 years, that's a huge time crunch. Yeah. And the faculty were not prepared. The educators were not prepared for this. We kind of saw it coming, but it was just like one day we were all in person, the next day we're all online, and everybody's scrambling to figure out what's going on and how am I going to do this. So.
Right. Well, and interesting enough, you were saying that the majority of the classes were in the education graduate programs, which probably is people who are already familiar with online education. I know, like, my own master's program is all online, and it's all instructional designers or K through 12 educators, but they're familiar with asynchronous work. They're familiar with the way the deliveries can be set up, and they're a little more patient with it than most students who are used to a different type of model. So, you've got that to deal with as well. And plus, when you set up online systems, the back end is its own technical beast. The front end is a different technical beast for the students and the faculty to have to learn. It's this huge shift. And the fact that anybody has been able to get online. Like I look at these K through 12s that are doing this, I'm like, you know what, like it's probably not perfect, but that's okay. Because, you know, like it's going to get better over time. And I think that my personal opinion is this may be the direction we're going for a bulk of how we're going to deliver courses in for some time. And I want to know your thoughts on that, because you're like way more into this now than I am. So.
Yeah, I think it's important to empathize with the faculty and the educators who are doing this and tell them we're all in the same team here, because saying things like this didn't go well or that didn't go well, that's fine, but we have to move on from that. We're in the next stage of it now. And I've really seen a shift in people's attitudes and perspectives about making the fall semester better. You know, each time if we do something different and just make it better for our students, that's an accomplishment. Those small steps definitely make things better for us and our students. So I think that just saying like a trial run of 3 months and saying it didn't work, that's not a good sample size for me. It needs to be a lot lengthier in terms of like, if the students for a whole academic year were online and comparing it maybe to those that were in person. And I know the school districts are struggling now. Are they going to do a high flex model? Are they going to do strictly online? You know, what's going to happen with that? And there's a lot of conversations, and I see it on LinkedIn and other platforms about what's the best way for us to go about this. And there is no right answer for this. You're going to have to try different things. It's going to be trial and error to see what works best for the population that you're serving. The one good thing about this is that I think online education and instructional designers are now getting the recognition that they deserve. Because instructional designers are not just people who know technology. They're project managers, they're teachers, they're technical experts. They know how to do things, like you said, on the back end, that they're aware of all these different, they have so much in their repertoire to share. And I liked when the Inside Higher Ed article came out about the hottest job in higher education was instructional designers, because that explained nicely what we do as instructional designers. And, you know, sometimes when I talk with my ID buddies, they're like, I try to explain to my family what I do, and they have no idea. It's really difficult to explain, like, okay, well, I train faculty how to teach online. But it's so much more than that. It really is. It's like, okay, well, I am developing a style guide for a training. I am developing a presentation that's going to take place, or a course that's self-paced, and people are going to earn badges for that at different levels, and these badges are going to be used across the system for recognition. You know, it's like, it can be so many different things.
Oh yeah, the minutia is incredible. Well, and actually, I just noticed that Sonia had a really good point in here, that and you know that online education is a completely different animal than remote training. And so, I mean, you know, it is what it is right now. You know, we're moving everything in a matter of 5 months. Feels like 5 years, but you know, we're moving everything over. And so, you know, that's where I think we shine, is we come in with a mindset. And the mindset is that it's about being able to demonstrate proficiency, to be able to build the confidence in using the tools, to be able to build in competency, to, you know, to getting familiar with how to interact and how to make things engaging versus just throwing it out there and throwing it over the fence. And, you know, that we're finding the limitations we didn't know we had before. You know, like my spouse actually is delivering an online course as we speak. He's not a course developer, so I keep giving him pointers and tips. His group has got, you know, like classified information. They can't do that online, right? So, I mean, there's all these different things, but we're still finding those same limitations in education too. You know, like you're using Canvas, right? The Canvas platform.
Yes, we have Canvas.
Which is great when you've developed an entire, you know, system to go onto Canvas and everything works together. But when you're just grabbing it and shoving stuff in there, there's a whole different mindset. So I mean, I'd love to know more about that too. How did it go for the faculty to migrate over to using Canvas, or were they doing it already?
A lot of our faculty were using Canvas to supplement their instruction already. So for some of them, it was an easy transition. I think we were doing the bare minimum with those faculty who were coming from face-to-face to online. They were posting their Zoom links to their synchronous sessions, and they had their documentation. But now we're taking them to another level. In online education, we developed a blueprint that is now available in all undergraduate online courses. So that's every course now at Touro. Besides the graduate, they have their own blueprints. And what it does is it has a homepage that has all the information for the students about how to get started, the policies that we have at the institution. And it's creating consistency across the courses. And I think that's one of our goals in online education, because we have a rubric. We want to have the quality assurance across the system. So that's one of the things that COVID has allowed us to do. We've struggled a bit to do that in the face-to-face, the hybrid courses, because they weren't technically online, but now it's an opportunity for us to say, here's a rubric. It may be targeting online courses, but really, when I go through training with the faculty, they always say to me, they're like, I can use this in my face-to-face course, or I can use this in my hybrid course. I'm like, absolutely. This rubric is a great guide for you. And I use it every time I set up my course. I'm checking off the items to make sure I have my welcome message, my welcome video, am I present in the course and the discussion boards, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's all these different types of rubrics, proprietary and otherwise, that are available for us to use. And, it gives you the guide. The guide's right there. You just have to follow the path.
Right. Well, that's cool, actually, that you've been able to set the standard for that, because the standard is kind of how you roll it out. Actually, I was just looking at the questions. Kara had asked, do you feel that your institution was able to make the astral courses during COVID, or were you doing, as she calls it, panic goji? There's a whole new terminology. I love that. But yeah. It sounds like you're able to think this through and at least establish, here's the guidelines, here's the standard that we want to set, and then you can continue to iterate from there, which I think, honestly, every online course I've ever taken, I think has improved over time. The next one I take will be even better. And as an instructional designer, I've never been afraid to take an online course, I will figure this out.
Absolutely. We can always do it. We can get through it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. Excellent. So, did you have to run courses then for the instructors so that they understood their Canvas structure and how best to present their materials?
Absolutely. We have done, since March, we have done every week. We have a workshop of the week, and we have a drop-in session for faculty for an hour. Okay. And we also consult one-on-one with faculty that they can sign up for. So the support has been in place from the beginning. And pre-COVID, we had an online teaching certification workshop that everybody has to go through, the Teach Online at Touro. Okay. So they have definitely done that. And the enrollments in that has increased exponentially since COVID. And we are getting such a high demand. We're running multiple iterations of it concurrently, because we have faculty in certain institutions, the designers in certain institutions can run it. And then we run it through online education. So we're taking a different population who may not have an instructional designer. We're kind of filling the gaps there, but everybody has to go through it. And of course, it's based off our rubric, and it's based off of research on what works well in the online space. And everybody wants it now. And we're kind of like, they're probably saying, I wish I would have did this pre-COVID, but we're here to support them. And there's a lot of things, like I said, that we have put in place to support the faculty if they're starting out in the beginner stage, or if they're in the more advanced, or they want to go back and they want to do what I call a course makeover and just change some stuff. We have the support in place for that.
Okay. Interesting. Well, it's fascinating too, because I came out of having worked with some of the MOOCs early on, and the MOOCs were originally established to study the online pedagogies and how they could be set up, and what worked and what didn't, and what students interacted with and what they didn't, and to really put the cool tool sets out there and find out what was really viable as far as learning technology integration. I'm just looking at questions here. And so Kara's got good questions. She says, when you're speaking about moving courses online, you mentioned students' learning styles. Would you talk more about that? And that's a concern to me is learning styles. And, that can be a double-edged sword to get kind of weighed into that. But what's done in that way to help students who learn in different ways?
Sure. And I know there's lots of conversations recently in recent years about if learning styles exist. And I do believe that they exist. It's just about your preference for learning, what you prefer to do. And I think in the online space, what that entails is diversifying your assessments and your activities in the courses for the students, and not doing the same things every week. Not saying that every week has to be different, because you want to get them into a nice routine and a nice flow. But in recent weeks, last week, I had my students they recorded a podcast. Cool. Or they created a video. And I'm not talking a video like we're talking right now. I'm talking like a Powtoon or something like that they had to keep under 2 minutes. And what they were doing, the topic at hand was intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And they had to discuss how that was related in the online setting. How do we correlate those things? And I graded them. Oh my gosh, top level work. And I was so impressed. So coming up with creative ways to assess your students. And I've seen them write stuff. And then when I gave them this activity, I could tell that they're on a higher level now, from the beginning of the semester till now, creating these assignments. And that's what we want. We want to build them up throughout the semester. And, I'm not a huge fan of discussion boards because those can become cumbersome. So what I try to do is I try to throw like a curveball in there every once in a while. And this week, my students can respond video only, no text responding. Okay. We're going to do all video. So your response is going to be, you're going to record your initial response, and then you're going to respond to your classmates, and I'm going to participate, and it's going to be video because the dynamic is different. You have body language. You have to think about what you want to say. You may have to script it out. When you're typing, you can go back and erase real quick. But now you're going to actually have to consider what you're saying and how you're presenting yourself on screen. So I think just a multitude of different activities and creating, this dynamic, like, oh, what are we going to do next? But, oh, this is great, and relating it to how this is going to help me in the professional world. I think there's some gaps that exist in education, like K through 12 to higher ed. There's a gap there. We're not connecting with the K through 12ers, which we should be, because they are preparing our students to come to the next level. And then higher education to the professional world. There's another gap there. Like, what are they doing in the workspace that we're not doing in education? How do we connect that? There's internships, there's clinicals for things like PAs. And I think those things are wonderful, because the students get to experience what it's like in the real world. We could talk all day about learning theories and instructional design in my class, but my goal is that these students, once they leave, they feel adequately prepared to be an instructional designer in the workforce. Right.
Well, and actually it's funny because one of the questions that popped up at the beginning of here was, about augmented reality. And so that's always a thing I think about with respect to online learning is, how can we take augmented reality and make that like a workplace training option. And these days it's come to fruition that there kind of is no other option in some cases. That you might have to show someone how to do a procedure, at least in an augmented reality space, and provide the tool sets for that, for them to be able to come in and then do the demonstration that they know how to do something, So it's forcing our hands in a lot of ways. And I know I've actually consulted during this time frame with organizations that were taking some of their, traditional hands-on learning into augmented reality spaces just out of necessity because there was no other way to train someone. So very cool. Do you have any thought? Are you guys doing anything like that at all?
Not yet, but I mean, I think our health sciences school will really lend itself to that sort of pilot. I was actually when we talked earlier, I was thinking about doing some augmented virtual reality stuff in some of those areas, like the nursing and the PAs and stuff. So because I want to see how this is going to disturb higher education. This is going to disturb education in general, especially now, because we're not going to be able to be in face-to-face classroom. So I'm kind of thinking in the course I'm teaching, how do I create an augmented reality with situational scenarios about instructional design? I'm really going to have some sophisticated AI going on there because there's a lot of different scenarios that you can present from a corporate setting or an education setting in terms of the scenario. So I see in the next 5 to definitely 10 years that these types of technologies are going to, again, disturb these platforms. And, LMSs such as Canvas and Blackboard and all those are going to have to figure out ways to integrate with these different platforms that people are starting to create. We figured out how does the virtual reality, augmented reality work with the LMS? So.
Right, exactly. Yeah, how do you deliver that? How can someone view it on a flat screen versus maybe their device that they have, in their hand? I mean, which most of these actually have some capability that way. And actually, it kind of dovetails to a question posted by Randy. Do you feel the model for instructional design support for faculty has been challenged by the crisis? Are we going to see a different instructional design model come out, or are we going to continue to work with, what we've done in the past, our conventional ADDIE models, or do you think that's going to change?
Yeah, I think it's changing because it's very high needs right now, and people again are seeing the value of instructional designers. And if you see I know jobs overall in higher education are down, but instructional design jobs are popping up like crazy. I get the higher ed jobs alerts, and I'm like 20 plus alerts a day about these jobs. And I think that the instructional design support, it's been tested, and we've been able to identify, the infrastructure has been tested. We've been able to identify the gaps in what we're doing. So for example, we expect the faculty to design mostly on their own with some of our support along the way. But now what we're talking about is setting more things that are structured for the faculty, saying, like, for example, we'll have all the modules set up with our overviews and headers appropriate, the design, and then they'll just go plug and play. Like the faculty do that on their own. So figuring out ways where we can help the faculty and not feel so stressed about the design, but also still allowing them to have that academic freedom and put their personal touch on it. So it's a delicate balance, definitely, between those two things as a designer. I think that faculty, when I work with them and I say, oh, I teach too, they kind of just look more calm. They're not just thinking we're going in and we're invading their personal space and taking over. And I offer them examples. We have some prefabricated content that we can populate into their courses for them. So I think we're trying to, it definitely opened up the gaps, and we're trying to figure out the delicate balance between where do we go as designers? Are we going to do more? Are we going to do less? And how are we going to have that partnership with the faculty in terms of making sure that the course still has their personalized touch on it?
Well, and that's one of the big challenges too, is unfortunately we Hollywoodize everything, right? And early on in the MOOC phase, we had some really big groups that brought forth the MOOCs, and with the MOOCs came what I always called the rock star profs. And I'm not joking. There were professors in the MOOC spaces who went on tours and set up meetups with their groupies and their fans, and it became like something that I think was intimidating to anybody who thought about putting together an online course. It's like, how can I be, this rock star, physicist that, has a following? And that's a hard bar to meet, but that's not what any of us are expecting in the real world. And then you get the other bar, which is, I work in corporate a lot. And so that corporate bar is way down here, and it's usually boring, and it's death by PowerPoint. So, but it has to be terribly intimidating for a prof who is used to, interacting with students in a classroom to make that change. Somebody said that's funny. It is funny. It's like there's just every model out there for education. The death by PowerPoint is by far the worst.
Yeah, corporate is a lot of check it off the list and just get it done and get your certificate. Yeah, for sure. And I think the important thing for us as designers is to remember that, to empathize with the faculty about where they started. And I think that's one of the things that instructional designers have, is those attributes to be able to take yourself back to the beginning where you started. And everybody starts somewhere. I reassure the faculty because they see my course and they're like, I want to do that. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you it took me 5 years to get to that point, but it did take me 5 years to get to that point. So let's pace yourself. Yeah. And when I do sessions with faculty who say, I want to do this technology, I want to put this in, I say, wait a minute, let's slow down here. Let's start with two things. Let's take two things that you really want to do in your course. Let's do them well this semester, and then we'll add on the rest next semester. Let's see how it goes. because I think there's also a need to overwhelm the students with technology and say, oh, I look what I can do, kind of show and tell type stuff, like you're saying, the rock stars. But we don't want to necessarily do that. We want to do it in a way that is valuable for everybody. It's not just a like, okay, I'm using a Flipgrid. Isn't this awesome? Well, why is it awesome? How can this be used in the professional world? How is this impacting me as a student? You have to ask those questions. It's not simply, okay, I used it, I checked it off the list, sort of thing. So empowering the faculty to take those things into consideration before they just start throwing all these technologies and all these different design things out at the students. Like I said, it's a delicate balance between different things in the online space.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place for the right technologies to be implemented as well. I in my own instructional design master's courses, I've had all kinds of tech thrown at me and thought, this is great, but it wouldn't apply in certain scenarios, So, I think you have to really evaluate it. But you're right. It's like anything. You should probably not be doing more than one or two things at a time, because if you're going to iterate, you want to throw something out there, see how it works, find out where it fails, right? Fail fast. And if it's not working, then bring it back and try something new. But, we do push people, I think, all the time to try new technologies. People talk, they talk about the things that they use on their phone, their apps, and it's like, and so there's this kind of a peer pressure thing to get in there and set up new technologies when, maybe we just need to get that solid base down first and figure out what really does work. I was actually seeing some other things in the chat here, which I think are interesting too, about budgets. That, in the past, and so you're saying that you're seeing a lot of new postings for folks in L&D, instructional designers and otherwise, and so am I. In the commercial space, and actually still subscribe to all the higher ed journals as well, so I see those too.
Yep.
Is there budget? Obviously, if they're hiring, there must be budget, but is there budget to create new materials? Because that's something I feel like we all struggle with in every organization.
And I think that the challenge with instructional designers is they have to do it at low or no cost. So the expectation is that the designer comes in with the knowledge that they know what the free tools are, and they know how to manipulate the free tools in a way that's going to make something that's fantastic. And I think it really depends on the institution. And we started a new fiscal year, and really next year is going to be like the challenge, the next fiscal year, in terms of like the budgeting for different products. I would say that's a conversation that I would definitely have, like if you're interviewing for a position and you want to have that conversation, if you get to the later stages, and ask them, is there a budget for marketing? Is there a budget for us to purchase some tech tools? What is your current status of tech tools? Because different technologies have different levels. Like VoiceThread has like platinum, silver, whatever levels, you can upgrade to get certain features. So I think that is definitely a conversation to have with the stakeholders who are involved with the budgeting stuff. Fortunately, my boss deals with a lot of those conversations, but we suggest things to her. About like, we think we purchased Canva this year because we were doing a lot of marketing stuff, and we were doing it in Microsoft Word. And while Word can be wonderful, Canva offers a lot of options in terms of the dynamic features. Like you can make things move, they have different databases you can pull images from. So I was like, this is probably something, it was relatively cheap. So this is probably something we're going to need from a marketing perspective in our department, or just creating flyers about workshops. So a lot of different things go into that conversation. And another thing too is to consider grant opportunities. If you go on the Department of Education's website, you have to really dig deep. You can find some grant opportunities that are offered either from the federal government, or your institution does some things too. We have like a presidential grant that comes out every year that faculty can apply for. I was at one point, I was asking them, can staff do it too? I have this idea. Can staff do it too? So applying for seeing where those opportunities are, so that you can get the tools that you need access to. And one more thing, that the technologies, the vendors, they do pilots. I know some vendors charge for pilots, but a lot of them will do it for free. So if you could get a pilot done in 3 to 6 months, and you can have the buy-in, and maybe your institution is like ours, where the money can come from different buckets. Like we can all kind of take say, I'll throw in $50 or I'll throw in $100, and then you can acquire that technology. So that's definitely something else to consider. But yeah, obviously budgets are constrained, and we have to be careful about what we're purchasing and what we're doing. But we can't do online without some of these integrations, some of these technologies. The LMSs do have limitations. They don't do everything.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, a lot of, they call them learning technology integrations. They're called LTIs in the higher ed space, but there's a lot of tools out there. And again, some of them charge and some don't, but you're right. I mean, the trials are great to get. And, if you can build a use case behind that, that's even better, to show the data and show the usage and come back to your faculty and staff and say, okay, we tried this out. This is what we got. This is what we think is good. This is what we think is not good. Then, you've kind of presented back to management in a way that they can evaluate, choose for next time, and maybe pay for it for the next person. Gosh, we have so many good questions in there. Just looking. Randy's full of them. He wants to know, how do you get new faculty to begin integrating the UDL, Universal Design for Learning approaches? And I assume that probably is with respect to like assessments, and that's typically how I think of UDL is making it. He hasn't responded, but yeah, I think that's probably where we're going with. How do you get new faculty to make that leap to the Universal Design for Learning mentality?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one, because the faculty are designing the way that they learn, and it's hard to shift the mindset from this is the way I learn to making it accessible for everybody and aligning things in a way that makes sense. And Universal Design for Learning is a component of our online teaching certification. The faculty, when I say UDL or accessibility, they don't know what I'm talking about, which is sad, but also an opportunity for us to educate them. And I think that's one of the things we're going to be focusing on as we move forward with this online, remote stuff, is the faculty, simple things like putting transcripts or closed captioning on your videos, the headers and the textual, the documentation, offering in multimodal formats, that sort of stuff. Like we want to get the buy-in through the easy stuff. And I think as far as assessments are concerned, I really like the diversity in the choices for students. If they want it, like my assignment was a podcast or a video, and oftentimes I'll offer 3 or more options, because then that gives the students, the opportunity, if they like to write, they can write. If they want to record something, they can record something, but everybody's coming to the same end result. You're opening up the access for everybody, I think that's the sort of things we need to consider as we move forward as faculty, is how we get everybody. Canvas has this great feature, which I would love to sit down for hours and hours and play with, called Mastery Pass. So you take an assessment and it puts you on a path based off of how you score on the assessment. So whether you're, beginner, intermediate, advanced, but by the end of it, everybody comes to the same conclusion. They're at the same spot. So the advanced learner may have a little less content to go over, but they have some more challenging assessments. The intermediate, same thing, beginner, they may have they have content and a lot more assessments, but everybody gets to the same point at the end. And I think that's a great tool for UDL. Yeah, it's something I really want to play with it, but it's a lot of back work. I can't sell it to faculty just yet if I haven't tried it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the time that I spent in higher ed, I know that we were evaluating tool sets as well for, captioning and whatnot. And of course in higher ed, you have that obligation to meet those standards. A lot of corporate settings don't necessarily have that because their audiences are closed audience. They don't fit that public model where they have to go think about accessibility. But I think probably the good thing for you is that that's just kind of part of the mindset of delivering in a university setting to begin with. So how cool. Okay. So we've talked about, like people learning these technologies and the instructional design methodologies needed to move on to online. I will tell you that there have been a lot of what I've seen they seem to be newer instructional designers coming into our field. A lot of them from teaching, because obviously teachers are not teaching in the public school spaces right now. Is there some guidance that we can give some of these folks, because our own industry is kind of in flux right now, right? How can we help set them up for success if they're coming into instructional design and they may be, eventually and hopefully sooner rather than later looking for jobs, and the jobs are popping up. I'm definitely seeing them. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. For teachers, I feel like teachers are the best instructional designers, and I'm not meaning to, marginalize anybody else, but teachers come in with this sense of pedagogy. They're already designing in terms of their lesson plan. So I would say to educators who are coming in this field, use the knowledge you already have. You have designed multiple iterations of various lessons. You have had observations. You have put things in a grade book. You have, you've done different activities that are kinesthetic. You have the components and the beginnings of a great instructional designer. And I don't feel like I would be as great as instructional designer without my pedagogical knowledge, because in higher education, the faculty are the subject matter experts. They know their subject so well. And they know it. They know inside and out. And I couldn't even tell you, when the nurses are talking about the different things they do with the devices, I can speak to it to a general term, but we want to show them that their content can be presented in a way that is so engaging. So taking what you know from the pedagogical perspective and giving them ideas is one of the ways in which a teacher can transition into instructional design. You already know it. I think some of the things that you have to learn is that you may or may not get through to the faculty, and that's fine. Some of the faculty are going to take a little bit more time to accept what you know. And coming in as an instructional designer, I had to learn a lot about the back end technical stuff that we were talking about earlier, and just be patient with myself. And I would ask the IT people a lot of questions. I would just be like, what does this mean? Can you explain this to me in a more simplified terms, because I don't understand whatever they're saying. I think it's important when you come in as an instructional designer to form those relationships with everyone that's involved in the process. You're not alone. You're on a team, whether that's through, some collaborations with the IT, with the faculty, with the department chairs. You want to make sure that everybody, who everybody is and how you're going to work with them to make sure that this beautiful learning experience is happening for the students. And that takes a lot of work on the back end of things.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I remember learning the term SIS, which is Student Information Systems, and the LDAP and all these crazy terminologies. And that was when I worked on the back end of Canvas. The front end is a different thing, but it is really important to know your experts. And I always call it kind of part of that expert tour. One of the things that I did actually when I was I did a short stint at Babson, and I had a bunch of professors that I was working with on the online program for essentially it was a management program. It was an innovation and management program. And because I really wanted to get to know them better, I actually would schedule like a 15-minute coffee with them, just to sit down and chat with them and find out what they were doing and how I could help them. And if I couldn't help them, then figure out who I could talk to who might be able to help them, and it's one of those things. It's about relationships. And that's one of the really hard things about being virtual, is getting those relationships going with people to be able to connect others. But, kudos to people who are doing this. They're doing an amazing job, and classroom teachers, I have the biggest amount of respect for, K through 12 teachers now that are having to figure out how to set up virtual classrooms and get the parents to get engaged for those who, might need a little help on the other end. I mean, parents are becoming the teacher assistants right now, and, they're learning the technology and all kinds of things like that. So I know you also mentor. You do some mentoring and some coaching with new IDs. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Initially in February, I wasn't very active on LinkedIn. And then I became very active and started connecting with instructional designers across the country. And then people started reaching out to me about like, well, I'm thinking about transitioning to instructional design. What can I do? Or how can I get into this field? It's a really hot field. And this is pre-COVID. Then when COVID happened, that obviously exploded a bit. So I would say the coaching opportunities go, you know, I have my outside consulting service, the Jolly Holly Ed Services, where I coach people, and it's various people, like faculty members, it's people who are K through 12ers who want to get into instructional design, people who are, you know, they may be in corporate and they want to transition to education, or education into corporate. So there's a lot of different things, and I let the client takes the lead. They're the conductor of the training. I tell them, I'm here in a supportive role. So whatever you want to talk about is what we're going to talk about. Do you want to talk about applying to these jobs? Do you want to talk about, you know, being more present on LinkedIn? And I let them run the show, basically, because I think it's so the thing that people need the most is that push. And to have somebody and a coach is supporting you. They're not on the field doing it for you or on the basketball court. They are there supporting you, telling you this might work. So why don't you try this play, or this might work so we could, you know, be successful. And I've gotten a lot of feedback on the fact that people say, I didn't know. They say thank you to me. They're like, you helped me do this. And I'm like, no, you had this in you from the beginning. I just brought it out and I made you realize your capabilities, your potential. And now you're reaching your potential. And I think some of it has to do with fear, is the fear of the unknown and not knowing everything, but none of us know everything. Oh. You know, you're an expert in something, I'm an expert in something, and somebody else is an expert in something else. Right. So I think that's where the coaching is really valuable.
And I think that's part of who we are as instructional designers and learning and development folks and learning technologists. Is I think just kind of by our nature, we know that we have to ask questions because it's how we build the content to deliver to somebody to teach. So I think, you know, it may be a little harder, I think, for others to ask for that help. I think that's just kind of part of what we expect to do, is to ask for help. But it is interesting because there are different roles that you take on with different people. I mean, I've got a couple of people that I've been working with, and, you know, at least one of them I'm talking to about working with contracting companies. Another, I've been talking about tools. I know that, you know, like Kara's done some amazing stuff, and Kara never sleeps. I swear to God, she never sleeps. She's been working with some folks as well, and she had presented a series for new instructional designers. I mean, and it's like, I just, and I think that there really aren't enough of us out there. I mean, my first thought when all this started happening is, there's certain fields that are going to ramp up and others that are, you know, probably going to fall by the wayside. And unfortunately, I think restaurant service is going to be one of those. But boy, this one is just taking off like hotcakes. And, you know, now is absolutely the time to kind of start putting those samples out there. And, you know, and we've all talked about this in some of our other chats about, you know, showing your work, talking out loud, explaining why you made a decision, you know, and how you arrived at something being a way to demonstrate the value that you have coming into this field. And, you know, again, it's iterative, right? You know, I think we're all comfortable with that. So, cool.
I think once people get to the point where they know that it's iterative, and there's really a no final stage of like, oh, this course is great forever. You have to update your resources to be current at a certain point, you know? So once you get comfortable with the fact that you're not going to sit still for too long, then you're ready to go as an instructional designer. It's like, oh, this is new. I'm going to try this. I'm going to see how this fits and how this fits into the bigger puzzle of things. It's wonderful because you're always learning something new. You're never bored. I'm never bored. I'm always exploring something new, and I'm learning from my designers. I'm learning from designers across the country and across the world about what they do. And it's fantastic. I would not want to be in any other profession than this.
No, I'm with you on that. I learn something new every day, and I take advantage of the opportunities to learn new things too. It's like we talked earlier about, you know, integrations and vendors and things. And this is something I've been saying to some people that are new to the field is, take advantage of those 30-day trials. You know, if you want to test something out, and even if you think it's a kind of a more corporate tool, or it's a higher end tool that would be used by a university, if somebody out there will grant you the access to use something for 30 days, you can test it out and see how it would work in what you're creating, then do it. You know, I mean, just, you know, a lot of times you don't have to give your credit card, or you might have to tell them that you have a position within whatever you do that might
to get
make
the discount or something.
Yeah,
right.
Or that you're a decision maker. You know, I get that question a lot. Like, you know, what role do you play? Well, I'm always been a product. Yeah, I'm a recommender. I've always been a product recommender in every role I've ever had.
Sure.
You know, so that's okay. You know, and that's what marketing and enablement and all these people do anyway. That's what they do for their job. They put it in a Salesforce document that they contacted this customer and they push out a sample. And so take advantage of that to learn, because there's so much stuff you can learn right now. I mean, and a lot of great online tools out there. So I'm really excited. So what's taking up the bulk of your time, like right now? Like when you said you're really busy, like what kinds of crazy things are you doing? Do you sleep?
Well, yes, from time to time I sleep. Well, mostly my doctorate and my dissertation is coming up, so it's taking up a lot of my time. But just working with our faculty and developing the support resources that they need is taking up the bulk of our time, and thinking about the fall. How is the fall going to look for us? You know, we've developed a communications plan for the faculty based off our rubric, like, you know, giving them resources, you know, making sure that they're just ready to go with the tools. Like, okay, you evaluated this summer, the spring and the summer didn't go exactly as planned. What are you going to improve on the fall? So that's taking up a lot of our time, is having those conversations. And my VP is having a lot of conversations at the top level, which is great, about what is the minimum that faculty need to do in the LMS to make the course, like, it needs a syllabus. Obviously, we know as instructional designers, that's common knowledge. It needs instructor contact information. So we're trying to figure out the requirements that surround that stuff and putting that information out prior to fall. So that's what's taking up a lot of my time. And then in the evenings, I do a lot of consulting work. So with my coaching clients, reaching out to them, seeing what they need. You know, I have one client in the process of applying for jobs, and I created this spreadsheet. I'm like, did you apply for this? When did you apply? Did you get an interview? You know, kind of just pushing that stuff along, so that they feel like what the work they're doing with me is purposeful, and they're being guided to something even greater than themselves.
I love that. That's actually really cool. And actually just jogged my memory about a question that I saw Kim post earlier. Are you getting any pushback from students with respect to tuition and fees for, you know, courses that are all online versus, you know, that experience? And I know that's been a big discussion in the Boston area because of Harvard. You know, I mean, a Harvard education comes with a certain pedigree, right? What's happening there?
So when the students were actually pushed out of their dorms in the spring, we refunded everybody their tuition as far as the housing was concerned for the tuition. So that was refunded. I haven't heard a lot of conversations going on about the online stuff and, you know, getting discounts and stuff for online, because we already had a lot of our programs online. So I haven't heard anything through the grapevine as a whole. And hearing things across the spectrum, yes, students are pushing back and saying, if I'm using my own electricity and I'm sitting in my house using my internet, I'm only going to pay what I need to pay to get access to this course. But the other thing too is they want a quality instructor. They don't want somebody who's not familiar. So, you know, again, that quality or that convenience might come at a cost. So those conversations are definitely happening across the realm in higher ed.
Well, and I think it sets a kind of a level set in a lot of different ways. It level sets students because they're all in the same space, they're all online, they all have the same opportunity to ask questions or to not ask questions. And it's the same with, you know, there's state universities and private colleges that are kind of in that position of being level set now as well. And, you know, like I have a family full of people who all came out of state colleges. You know, I mean, so, you know, I always say it's what you make of it. You know, I mean, I feel like my state college degree from Colorado State was very useful to me. You know, my husband's the same. My daughter was an Oregon State grad. And yet, you know, my daughter's talked to me about going to, you know, get a master's degree at, you know, a school that's got a bigger name. And I think, again, it's that mindset. What are you going to do with it? You know, does it make sense to go and go to that school that has a name for, I don't know, it could be Columbia, you know, the teaching school there. You know, I think it really depends on the participant and what you decide to do with it. I'm not sure what I think about Harvard going all online. So
yeah, I know that kind of changes, like what you're saying, the pedigree and the how it feels and everything. It's so brick and mortar and the ivy growing on the campus and all that stuff. It changes the way that it feels. And in speaking to that, you know, it's really important that the students understand that, just like if we go into a store and you want to buy Nike or Adidas or Fila, sometimes you're paying for the name, you're not paying for the quality of the education. So you have to take that into consideration. And one thing I suggest to people when they're looking into a program is to talk to other people who have been through that program, because they will give you the honest, like, this was the worst program I've ever been through, or this was the best, such and such is a great instructor. You can reach out to him, her, that sort of stuff before you actually enroll, because it's great. They all have great enrollment advisors, but they're trying to sell it to you. You want to make sure that you're getting what you need. That's very, very important.
Yeah, it's interesting because think about, you know, things that are uniquely Harvard, Kennedy School of Government. You know, I mean, that's all about networking, right? You know, you think about things like the Harvard medical schools. I mean, like, I go to all Harvard doctors because, you know, I'm in that Boston market, and I'm thinking, do I feel comfortable with all of them getting an online degree? I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Super cool. Well, so how can people reach you? Because I know I know you said you just got onto LinkedIn, which is, like, to me, it's one of the best tools in the world for reaching people in any profession, but especially us, because we are, like, all on there. But how do people reach you? I mean, do you have a Twitter? Should they go to your website? I think I might have your website link.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way actually to reach me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so if you want to reach out, message me. I'm happy to chat. My consulting website is jollyholly.me. If you want to reach me by email, you know, the information's on my site, but it's holly.owens@jollyholly.me. And also, if you want to reach out to me professionally at Touro, it's holly.owens@touro.edu, and that's listed on our online education site. Twitter, I'm not as active on Twitter as some of the other instructional designers. I kind of get in there and retweet some stuff. So that's at iHollyo. But the most engaging platform I'm in is LinkedIn. I'm there most of the time. So reach out. I'm happy to chat with you about whatever. If you just want to sit down for 30 minutes and share ideas, you know, we call Luke Hobson I don't know if you know him. He's an instructional designer at MIT, and he and I have nerding out coffee chats about instructional design. And we just talk just like this, and we're just sharing ideas. And it's wonderful because when I'm done with those conversations, I feel so like I'm ready to go, and I feel like I learned something new, and either he helped me or I helped him, and that's great. It's a wonderful experience. So I love doing those nerding out sessions.
I might have to ask for an invite to that, because I love the MIT. Is it the School of Media, I think, that has gotten involved? Yeah. So, people know that I'm a native of Colorado, but I have been in the Boston market. You know, I was here for 22 years and then came back because we loved it here. And there's so much great thought leadership in the area. So I love to hear from those people. It's all good. I mean, and you know, the original MOOCs kind of were invented by Harvard and MIT, right?
Definitely.
The whole edX platform, you know, they're the ones that got us to thinking that it might be okay to actually take a class online and at the right price.
Yes.
So, cool. Well, this has been great. I'm really hoping that we can get you back to talk again at some point too. So, and you know, everybody, I mean, go ahead and just reach out to Holly, because I think she said that was okay. You might be getting
please reach out. That's fun. That's great.
All right. And thank you all for being here. It's been great for me today too, because, you know, it was not my typical Groundhog Day, you know, whatever, how many months in. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.